makers. So I've printed out a heap of parts for Fred's new head. Most of the parts that I've printed, not all, most are actually remixes or remakes of the original parts. So we'll go through a few of the parts before I assemble it and go over why I've chosen these parts. In the description below you'll find a link to all of the parts that I've used here, but let's start with the top skull. So the top skull's pretty straightforward. Instead of having lots of cuts through, which I had trouble getting to line up, and then having a piece in the middle at the top to support it all, this was a single print. It won't fit on a 120 by 120 print bed, but I've got a 200 by 200. I've got a 500 by 500 as well, but this printed on the 200 by 200 with no problems at all. This one was created by, I think it was Dick's. I'll just look it up. Dick's 238. He also created this piece, which is in the same Thingiverse file. They just slot together. And it's easy enough to just put screws in and hold it into one piece. I do like this big hole in the back. It does allow you to have access and see what's going on inside without having to pull the whole head apart. Okay. Now this part is in the same file still, and it goes on the front and goes up against, sits on the top of the face. The back end fits on the back of the low skull. I actually use different screws here. So these are the screws I've used for these joints, and also the ones to go into here. Now I won't weld this to this piece. When I do get around to welding, I'll weld this to the top of the eye section instead. Okay, so that's that part assembled. Now, going back some time ago, a user on Thingiverse, monneby, created this part. Managed to break it already, and it mounted a servo that way and operated a jaw underneath, and that's what I've used in Fred for a while. It was difficult getting the advanced eye mechanism created by Dakota 76 in, as it literally hits the top here and prevented the servos from being mounted properly. But when I was looking around, I found that another user on Thingiverse had made a modification of a modification. So Matt's created this, then Dick's 238 created a low back skull similar to this, and then now richardtracy is his name, created a new version of this and a new gear that fits better, and this is the new base by richardtracy. So the major difference here is he's rotated the servo from being in that direction to being in that direction, and then he flipped it as well so it works up. Now there's a couple of advantages to doing that. One of which is now we've got these arms will come down and operate to draw the jaw that way of this. Whereas before you had to have slots in the arms that allowed the block to move up and down and back and forth inside as these changed the distance. So I think this will probably be better. I haven't fully assembled that section yet, so we will do that. But before I do that, I'll put this back section on. So this is the Richard Tracy low back skull. I've mounted the servo in it already, and I also mounted the gear on the horn and mounted the horn to the servo, because you have to do that after you put the servo in. That then fits in there. So let's screw that on for a start. Now for that I've used some fairly coarse screws. So another major reason why I'm using remix components rather than the original Inmoov components is once this is all assembled and on its base, wherever I've put that, there's a fair bit of room here for a Raspberry Pi and associated cards to be installed. Now there's a hole up through here which lines up with this gear and stops it from flexing too much. If it flexes too much, then it will disengage from the neck and not drive properly, or wobble a fair bit. Either of those is not optimal. Okay. Now we have these pieces. And they fit in like so. Okay, so now that's on, we can look at the jaw. Actually, before I put the jaw on, I think I might put the face on. So this is the face that was created by Jurgen. If you look at the original, there is a piece cut out in the original so the eye section can go in. This is all done in one piece. I like it because there's less holes in there. It is, however, harder to fit on the frame. Now, I've already pre-inserted a nut here and a nut here. It's a better view. So that makes it a bit easier, and if you look up you can just see the screw starting to poke through into the nut. Once these are done up, it's very solid indeed. Okay, so it's both our servos mounted, and literally the bottom half of the skull, the top half sits on quite easily. I won't weld that piece on at this stage until such time as I have the advanced tie mechanism installed. Now for the lower jaw. So these two pieces are part of Richard Tracy. I did get that right, didn't I? yeah, these are part of the richardtracy base. So I've screwed those onto the jaw, which I think is also from his files, or it might be from monnerby's. And that then clips onto here. And here. And I'm going to have to do a little bit of fine tuning for clearances. I suspected that was the case. So there is a bit of roughness here, a little bit in there, so I'll have to clean up so that that moves in and out easily. I'll do that off camera because I'll make a mess while I'm doing it. But what I will have to do is, with it fully open, is attach that piece. And there is another one. That one needs a little bit of a clean up, but that should be alright. Okay, now we have this bar which fits across here. And that will be driven by this. This is the original one I printed. I actually had a wrong printer setting when I did it. This is another one I'd printed with the right settings, and that screws in quite nicely. So this is just going to take a little bit of freeing up. Most of the stickiness is coming from the jaw here impacting here, and that's just a bit of file work to clean that up. And to make sure these pieces don't come loose, which would also cause that same issue, I'll weld the tops of those in. Before attaching this piston part onto the servo and screwing it down, make sure you've got the servo in the right position to do so. So if you've got the mouth all the way closed, make sure you've got the servo all the way in the counterclockwise position, otherwise you will burn your servo out, and no one wants you to burn your servo out. So before I I've actually got the screw in there already, so I can reach down with this very thin screwdriver and do up the screw. I'm not going to do that yet because I haven't verified the position of that servo. Okay, so I've got left, I can go on the back here. This is technically the wrong screwdriver for the screw. If you look closely at the head of these screws, I'll see if I can find one in a bit better condition. I wonder if this camera will focus for me. Here we go. You can see the little star crosses on that screw. This one's been butchered a little bit by me. They're actually a posi drive, and this screwdriver is a Phillips So while I can get it in there and I can turn it, it's actually the wrong screwdriver and it does slowly damage these screws. Okay, so this fits on top here, and I'm using these very small screws. I haven't been able to find these ones again. I did find them, I think, at the local supermarket, but I may have ordered them in on eBay years ago. And I'm putting those in these little screw holes at the back. I like a number 2 gauge or 2mm screw, and they're only like 10mm long, if that. Okay. Now, I'll actually show you the difference here. This is the original monneby speaker box, an insert which fits inside to hold the speaker or allow the speaker to mount onto it, and then there was this cover, and what he did was screw through the 4 corners where his speaker mount was and hold this on in place. You might have had it this way as a bit of an inset. And then these holes here lined up with these holes here to clamp it in place. Now on Richard Tracy's version, he's put the hole in the back for the wires to go through, and a couple of screw holes here for mounting purposes. And when we look in the bottom here, you can see 2 holes here for mounting, and that sits in there. Those holes line up, and we can use a couple of nuts and bolts to hold those together, which I will do. But before I get too carried away, I need to fit a small I2S amplifier module into there, wire that, and then connect that into the speaker. So I may yet have to pull that header off because it stands up too high. Had the header been laying down, it would have, like a 90-degree one, it wouldn't have been so bad. I haven't yet printed off a copy of the advanced die mechanism yet. I'm planning on putting in there. I'll do that and I'll install that in another video, I think. These are parts, they're in Richard Tracy's design modification. He's got a stand that comes up in 2 pieces and supports where the mount at the top was for the intersection of various parts from the original Inmoov skull. I obviously don't need that for the support anymore, so I'm not printing those or putting those in. These are the ears from the original Inmoov website. Now there's a little bit of misalignment. You know, these fit better if you turn them the right way. So now we have a full Inmoov head. Now there is this black ring. It is actually an original Inmoov component. To see where it fits, I'm going to have to take the skull off again. I need to take it off anyway to fit that speaker box properly. So if you look at the gear in the back here, you'll see it's designed such that that slots in underneath the gear. Now I'll go and grab the base that it sits on. Now at the moment, to stop this from pivoting on the ball joint, I've actually got a permanent marker pushed up through the middle, and that stops it from moving around. And I can just pull that out when I'm finished. Okay, so that's it sitting in place. You can see the gear is meshed. There is a little bit of slop in it. I think that's more to do with the joint here, and that's something that either myself or someone else may remix and put proper ball bearings joints in there. If I did this screw up underneath into here, it might hold it in a bit tighter, and a ball bearing would probably work for that as well. So still a little bit of work to do. I've got to clean up the jaw so it moves easier, make sure these are all free to move. It's a little bit stiffer than I would like, so I might have to sand it a little bit more. They did come off the printer this morning. So yeah. So I'll call it quits on the build for this video, and we'll come back to the rest of it on the next one when I install the advanced eye mechanism after I've printed it, and hopefully install the Raspberry Pi into it as well. It's a little bit different to the last head I built. In fact, I'll grab that. So this is the last head, and take its cover off, and you can see I've got the Raspberry Pi mounted in here with the advanced eye mechanism here. So when you sit them side by side, you can see there's not quite as much room at front because of this eye mechanism here, but there is a little bit of room at the back here, so I might be able to bring the Raspberry Pi back a little bit, bring it down a little bit. On this one I was able to mount one of these power supply units. This is a 3 amp switch mode power supply, DC-DC buck boost. This will take an input voltage of between 4 and 30 volts and give me a voltage out that's controlled by the setting on this potentiometer. I typically run these 3.1 volts, which is a nice happy voltage for the Raspberry Pi, and will actually run these servos. It is limited to 3 amps though. What I may end up doing on this one is actually putting 2 of these in, one for the Raspberry Pi and one for the servos. What I did on this one is, on the side here I have the servo driver servos, and then you've got the one for the jaw and the one to rotate their head. So a total of 8 so far. Alright, so that'll do for this build. I will see you in the next video. Don't forget to subscribe, ring that bell, and I've also just recently started a Patreon after somebody mentioned it in one of my video comments, so there is that if you're interested as well. And we'll see you in the next video.